third term of the Washington County District Court is now in session. The Honorable Robert McAlpin Williamson presiding.
Be seated. Mr. Shepherd, will you please inform us of the docket for today?
There is one case on the docket for today, Your Honor. Republic of Texas versus Samuel Smith on the charge of horse stealing.
Very good, Mr. Shepherd. Is the prisoner present?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe Sheriff Stevenson has the prisoner outside.
Very well. Sheriff Stevenson, you may bring in the prisoner. Now, Mr. Shepherd, will you please read the indictment?
Samuel Smith, you are charged with the crime of horse stealing. On the night between the 13th and 14th of February, in the year of our Lord, 1837, and of the Republic of Texas the first, in the county and town of Washington, not having the fear of God before his eyes, but being moved and seduced by the instigation of the devil, at Washington aforesaid, in the county aforesaid, with force and arms did feloniously take, steal, and carry away from, and out of the possession of Joseph L. Hood, of the county and town of Washington, a certain bright sorrel horse of great value, to wit, of the value of $150, which said horse, be the said Smith, did then and there aforesaid feloniously take, steal, and carry away from, and out of the possession of the said Joseph L. Hood, to the great damage of the said Joseph L. Hood, and in contempt of the court of this republic, and contrary to the peace and dignity of the same.
And how does the accused plead?
I plead not guilty, Your Honor, and place myself upon the country.
And who is counsel for the prisoner?
I am, Your Honor. Wilson McFarland, representing the defendant.
Please enter McFarland's name into the record. Sheriff Stevenson and Mr. Shepherd, are you prepared to draw the names of the jury for your roll?
We are, Your Honor.
Please do so.
Gentlemen and ladies in the audience, please look at your summons and come up forth when your name is called. John S. Guthrie. Devereaux J. Woodleaf.
You may be seated.
James Farmer. Adam Lawrence. David Laughlin. John M. Burton. James Gray. Sanford Woodard. Abner Lee. L.P. Moore. Fielding Rubel. John S. Strump. Shubal Marsh. John Early. Peter Fleming. R.S. Armstead. Richard Babb. Elliot M. Milliken. John Whitesides. A.C. Dillingham. Robert Moffitt. I will now administer the oath to the jury. Please raise your right hand. And at the completion of this, say, I do. You and each of you do solemnly swear that you will tell and truly hear and try the case at issue between the parties, and a true verdict render according to the facts as they may appear to you in evidence, so help you God.
Does the Republic wish to make an opening statement? Mr. Hudson.
Yes, Your Honor, we would.
Please do.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've prepared a opening statement. If it pleases the court. On the night of February the 13th, or the morning of February the 14th, in the year of our Lord, 1837, a bright sorrel mare, known by the name of Bonaparte, was carried away from the possession of Mr. Joseph L. Hood. The theft caused great financial and emotional damage to aforesaid Mr. Hood, as the horse is valued at $150. We believe the evidence presented today before this court will without a doubt show that Samuel L. Smith, with malicious intent, is the man who carried away aforesaid Hood's fine animal. On the night in question, the aforesaid sorrel horse was tied behind Hood and Steele's storehouse on Ferry Street. The proprietors of that establishment were diligently working late into the night on their bookkeeping. Around midnight, the aforesaid Mr. Hood went behind the building to answer the call of nature and found his fine sorrel animal was no longer there. He began to call his horse, but it did not come. And when he was calling out, he discovered an empty spirits bottle cast upon the ground near where his horse had been. The local tavern keeper informed Mr. Hood that the bottle came from their tavern. He described the man who had bought the bottle that night as having a limp and giving his name as Smith. A local resident was also an eyewitness to a man fitting the description of the defendant riding a fine sorrel horse and stopping near their dwelling on Main Street that same night. The defendant has also recently quarreled with the aforementioned Mr. Hood over the sum of money. The most overwhelming evidence is that when the sheriff apprehended the defendant, he was in the possession of Mr. Hood's fine sorrel horse. With this amount of evidence, and the Republic believes that you will see and that you will agree that the defendant is guilty as charged. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. McFarland, does the defense wish to make an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, the Republic has told you that they have overwhelming evidence in this case. But let us look upon the facts. Firstly, Mr. Smith was drinking at Lott's Tavern in Washington on the night in question. So were many others. In fact, we have an eyewitness that was with Mr. Smith most of the evening and can testify to his whereabouts. Second, the night of the theft was dark and foggy. It would have been difficult for anyone to see someone riding down the road, much less give a detailed description of them. Thirdly, when my client was apprehended, he did have the horse in question. He had found the horse wandering outside of town and had every intention of bringing it to Washington to find its owner. Mr. Smith is not a horse thief, as we believe the evidence will show.
Mr. Hudson, is the Republic ready to call upon a witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The Republic would like to call Mrs. Lott to testify, please.
Slide your summons. Here's some in order. Slide, if you'll raise your right hand. Mrs. Lott, I will now swear you in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
Good afternoon, Ms. Lott. How are you today?
I'm good.
Thank you for being here for us today. Ms. Lott, could you tell us how long you've lived in the fair city of Washington?
About 2 years.
And in all that time, Ms. Lott, have you ever encountered the defendant?
Yes, I am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Did you encounter the defendant on the night of February the 13th?
I did.
And what was the defendant doing at that time?
He was in my tavern.
And and what was he doing in your tavern?
What everybody does nowadays, drinking and complaining.
Drinking and complaining. Do you recall what he was drinking that night, ma'am?
He was drinking rum.
Drinking rum. Did he order and pay for a specific bottle of rum?
Yes, he did. He'd ordered a bottle of rum that I get shipped in special that is green and round bottle.
Ms. Lott, did that rum come in a bottle like this?
It did?
Do you remember the man you sold that bottle to that night?
Yes, sir.
And is that gentleman in the courtroom today?
Yes, sir. It's the defendant.
Can you point him out? Thank you. Do you remember the time that the defendant left your establishment?
About 11 o'clock at night, he was with a gentleman whose name I don't know that ended up leaving, but that gentleman didn't pay for his drinks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lott. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. McFarland, do you have questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Lott, you mentioned in your testimony that Mr. Smith was complaining.
Your Honor, what does Mr. Smith's complaint have to do with the facts of this case?
Mr. McFarland, do you have a reason for asking the witness this particular question?
I think that the answer might help us in finding out about the relationship relationship that my client had with Mr. Joseph Hood.
Overruled. You may proceed with caution.
Mrs. Lott, I put my question to you again.
He was complaining about not getting paid by Mr. Hood.
He was complaining again.
Mr. Smith had been going on about how Mr. Hood and Steele in the store had paid them for fixing the doors and windows.
Interesting. No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down, Mrs. Bond. Mr. Hudson, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Republic would like to call Ms. Bethel Morris to testify.
Garrison votes for an order. Mrs. Morris, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
I did.
Hello, Ms. Morris. How are you today?
Good, how are you, sir?
Thank you for coming here and doing your civic duty today. Ms. Morris, I'd like to begin by asking you, where do you live, ma'am?
I live here in Washington, not 100 feet from this building on Main and Market Street.
So just right yonder, close from here. Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you. Could you describe what you saw in front of your home on the night of the 13th of February?
I was having a wakeful night, so I lit a lantern, and I went out on the porch to get a breath of fresh air. Not long after I came out on the porch, I heard a horse coming down the street. I could also hear a man uttering the most foul, unsalubrious language I have ever heard. Their shape came into view, and I could see the rider struggling with the horse. He and the animal came to a halt in front of my dwelling on the street. He dismounted and began to curse even more, and began to pull out the animal's bridle. The horse did not seem to want to listen to the man. I called out to him, which seemed to startle him. He hurriedly got on the horse and then hurried off.
So, first of all, ma'am, allow me for the Republic of Texas to apologize to you for the coarse and vulgar language that you were subjected to that night. And did I hear you right to say that the man struggled with the horse and the horse appeared not to want to do what he said?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Did you notice anything else different about the man's appearance?
He had a limp and was wearing a tailcoat.
Okay. Did you notice anything particular about the horse?
It was a pretty sorrel color.
Okay. Did you look at that man's face that night, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
And is that man in the courtroom today?
Absolutely, the defendant.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, I have no further questions for this lady.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. McFarland, would you like to question the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Morris, you said that you went outside to catch breath of fresh air, and that when you did so, you lit a lantern. Was that because this was a particularly dark, foggy, moonless night?
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Morris, would you be so kind as to tell me what letter is written on this piece of paper? How about if I come a little closer?
Mr. McFarland, what is the point of this? Are you harassing the witness?
Your Honor, I am just striving to prove that the witness's eyesight is so poor that she could not possibly be relied upon to accurately identify my client. She could not see what was written on this piece of paper when I was here, nor when I went steps closer.
Very well. You may proceed.
Mrs. Morris, how long has your vision been poor?
It's been poor for a while now, but I would never forget a voice like him.
Mrs. Morris, thank you. You're excused.
But that voice, I swear, that's his voice. I may not be able to see too well,
Your
but
Honor,
that's his voice.
This witness has continued to give testimony, after which she has been dismissed.
I will
ask
never
that all of
forget
this be
such
disregarded, that the
unsalubrious
jury
voice
not
Your Honor,
consider
Your Honor,
this.
Your Honor.
Calm.
Mr. McFarland has passed the witness, and she has not been excused by the court yet. It is my intent to ask her a redirect on examination about anything else that allowed her to know, beyond a shadow of doubt, that the defendant on the horse that night was in fact the defendant in the courtroom here today. The witness's credibility and her identification of the defendant were attacked mercilessly by my worthy opponent. Indeed, if the court strikes Ms. Morris' testimony, gives an end and strikes her cross-examination, it is my right and my intent to ask the same matters as we say here already, and for the court to properly allow her testimony to stand if the court wishes to proceed in that fashion, sir.
The objection will be overruled. The witness statements will stand, Mr. McFarland, and you are excused, Mrs. Morris. Mr. Hudson, do you have any other witnesses to call at this time?
Yes, sir, Your Honor, the Republic would like to call Mr. Joseph L. Hood to the stand, please.
solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is true, so help you God?
I do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hood. For the purpose of the record, could you state your current profession?
Yes, sir. I own along with my partner, Mr. William H. Steele, we own a building and have a business together just right over there.
Yes, sir. And all the time that you and your partner run that business, have you ever encountered a defendant?
Yes, I have.
And would you describe your business dealings with the defendant?
It was just pretty simple. He was a handyman around the place. He would come in and he fixed some windows and he fixed some doors that needed to be repaired for us.
Yes, sir. Did some minor repair for you. And has Mr. Smith been paid for this work yet, sir?
Not yet. We're on hard times now. And no, I wasn't able to pay him right away, but we still intend to.
Yes, sir. And when was the most recent visit by Mr. Smith to your place of business?
Well, it's interesting you would ask me that because it was on the very day that my horse was stolen. As a matter of fact, he came in like he'd done several times before to request to be paid, and I explained to him, just like several times before, that we would pay him as soon as we could, only this time he became irate about it. And he even hollered out, he said, "I'll get you for this, Hood!" Before he stomped out the door, slammed the door behind him.
And so, let me make sure I understand. He said to you, "I'll get you for this."
That's what he said.
He said that
He did.
last time you saw him, on the day prior to your horse going missing that night.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Now, Your Honor, I have no further questions from Mr. Hood.
Mr. McFarland, do you wish to cross-examine the witness?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hood, did you know that my client was going around town complaining about not getting paid?
I'd heard something as such as a rumor about town that he'd been bad-mouthing us some.
Did this upset you?
If Your Honor, what's the point here?
Withdrawn. Mr. Hood, do you harbor any ill will against my client?
I do not.
Your Honor,
Yeah, Mr. McFarland, this is a highly inappropriate one.
Your Honor, this man had a quarrel with my client for non-payment. He did not pay him, and then my client complained around town. I believe this inflamed Mr. Hood. I then find it highly irregular that this same man is then put onto the grand jury, serving as the foreman, issuing true bill against my client.
I was elected by freeholder role, and all I'm trying to do is my own.
Your Honor,
This is highly irregular. It's a conflict of interest.
Your Honor, if I might, if my esteemed colleague here does not like the laws of the Republic of Texas, I would suggest that he go east to the Red River, back to Louisiana, from which he came, and take up residence.
Gentlemen, both of you calm down. Mr. McFarland, considering your actions just now, I'm finding you $5 for contempt for your examination of the witness. You may pay the district clerk at the end of the trial.
I don't need to wait.
At the
I'll
end
pay
of
it right
the
now.
trial.
$5, not a penny more.
Well, we shall move forward.
Money's good, Your Honor.
Does the Republic wish to call any other witness at this time, Mr. Hudson?
No, Your Honor, we do not.
Someone's crying. Very well, Mr. McFarland. Does the defense wish to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Mr.
Yes, you are dismissed.
The defense calls Mr. Francis Kennedy to the stand.
Mr. Kennedy, your summons, please, sir. Appears to be in order. Sir, if you will raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Kennedy, can you describe the events on the night of the 13th of February?
Well, I walked from my dwelling house to Robert's Hotel and bought some catfish. Sat on the porch, did a bit of chewing, spin for a while. Then saw on the porch, when I was starting to get dark, I saw Mr. Smith coming out on the street, and I invited him to the porch, and we started drinking. With that, we spoke for a little bit, taking pulls from a little bottle that we had. When the bottle ran out, Watts Tavern. Continue on the merrymaking down there. We bought a bottle of rum, started drinking till late in the evening, and we left our way back to my house, and I offered Mr. Smith to spend the night because we were pretty liquored up.
That bottle that you mentioned, did you leave Watts with that bottle?
Yes, we did.
And what time did you leave Watts?
Must have been around 11. We were both pretty jolly by then.
Did you go straight to your dwelling, or did you wander around?
We wandered for a bit.
Where did you go?
Well, Smith been having a dispute. He had been was done wrong by Hood and Steel store. So he was talking about that, and they said they hadn't paid for some work, and that he done for them.
Did you go by the Hood and Steel storehouse?
We did.
And what happened there?
So he yelled, "Curse at the store," then throw the bottle.
When he threw the bottle, did he hit the building?
He missed it.
Why didn't you retrieve the bottle then?
We didn't want to cause any trouble, so I grabbed Smith and pulled him down the street toward my dwelling.
From your view on the street, did you see a horse behind the building?
There was a big sorrel horse tied back up there, but the bottle probably spooked him a little bit.
So the horse was spooked. Did he break loose from the lead?
I don't know, but he was dancing a bit.
And was that horse still there when you left?
We went straight to my dwelling, and I took Smith home, and I passed out.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Hudson, does the Republic wish to question the witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to. So, Mr. Kennedy, what'd you do the next day?
Well, I woke up with a big pain in my head, and I made me a big thing of coffee.
Big coffee. Was that coffee just for you, or was Mr. Smith still with you?
Mr. Smith was gone by this point.
Okay. So you don't know when Mr. Smith left your dwelling?
I have no idea, but I do remember talking to him before I fell asleep.
So the defendant was still there when you fell asleep?
Yes, from what I understand.
So you don't know what time Mr. Smith left your house, do you?
No, sir.
No further question, Your Honor.
You may be dismissed. Mr. McFarland, does the defense have any other witnesses to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Mr. Samuel L. Smith to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Smith, how did you come into possession of the horse in question?
Well, I woke up in the middle of the Lavahea Road on the morning of the 14th. I'm not quite sure how exactly I got there. I've been drinking pretty heavily the night before, and I suppose I might have left Kennedy's and tried to make my way home. But I'm not quite sure. I got up, tried to figure out exactly where I was, and I heard a rustling behind me in the brush. I turned around and I saw a big sorrel horse with a rope tied around its nose and ears, but couldn't find a rider anywhere. So I wanted to get on home, but with this limp, it ain't too easy. My house is about a mile down the road outside of town. So I pulled myself up onto the horse and figured I'd take him back to my house until I knew quite sure what to do.
Mr. Smith, before I ask this next question, I will remind you that you are under oath. Did you steal that horse?
No, sir. I ain't never stole nothing.
And at the time that you found the horse, did you have any idea who it belonged to?
No, sir.
Mr. Smith, why didn't you take the horse to town and see if anyone had claimed it?
Well, as I said, I was in a pretty bad way after all that drinking. I need to go home and rest. I had every intention, though, of returning that horse to town after I finished recuperating.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Hudson, does the Republic have any questions?
Yes, Your Honor, we do. So, Mr. Smith, did you not work for Mr. Hood, and in the time that you worked for Mr. Hood, did you ever have occasion to see his large sorrel horse by the name of Bonaparte?
Well, yes, sir, I did work for him, and I'd seen his horse before, but with so many sorrel horses in town, I wasn't quite sure if that was his or not.
I see, no further question, Your Honor, thank you.
You may step down, Mr. Smith. Mr. Hudson, does the Republic have any witnesses it wishes to call out as a rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, we would like to call, Robert Stevenson, the sheriff of Washington County, to testify.
You'll raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give is true, so help you God?
I do.
Good afternoon, Sheriff Stevenson. Thank you for being here today, sir. Thank you for the work you do for the County of Washington. Sheriff Stevenson, how did Mr. Smith come to be a suspect in this case today?
Well, Mr. Hood posted a reward for his lost horse the day after it went missing. The next day, a citizen reported seeing Mr. Smith riding that same horse down Lava Hill, about a mile outside of town.
Objection, Your Honor. What this citizen, who may or may not be real, told the sheriff is hearsay. This does not rebut facts or evidence previously given, and instead attempts to inject new facts into this case. I ask that the jury be instructed to disregard this statement.
Overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sheriff Stevenson, when you were dispatched to execute the legal arrest warrant for Mr. Smith, where'd you find him?
Well, I went to his dwelling and found he wasn't there, but I did see some hoof prints that matched the description that Mr. Hood had given of his horse. His horse has a specially forged shoe to correct the deformity of the hoof.
So let me make sure I understood you correctly, sir. You did not find him at his home. You found him further away from his home.
Correct.
On the horse, riding the horse. In a direction not towards Washington, but away from Washington.
Correct.
Yes, sir, thank you. I just want to make sure I understood that correctly. So what'd you do next, Sheriff Stevenson?
Well, I got back out on the Lava Hill and rode a little bit up the road.
And in what direction was Mr. Smith heading when you overtook him?
He was heading away from town.
Away from town. Sheriff Stevenson, what did Mr. Smith what did you ask Mr. Smith when you overtook him?
Well, I asked him if the horse he was on was his, and he said no. He said he had found it. I then asked if he had reported the horse missing, or if he knew whose it was. After a bit of coaxing, Mr. Smith stated that he thought it might belong to Joseph Hood. I then took him into custody.
So he said, by his own admission, he thought it might belong to Joseph Hood. He was on said horse riding away from Washington at that time you had overtaken. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Does the defense wish to question the sheriff?
No, Your Honor.
Does the Republic wish to call any further witnesses for rebuttal?
No, Your Honor.
Then we will hear closing arguments. Mr. Hudson, would the Republic like to make a closing argument?
Yes, sir, we would. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I think we have laid out the facts of the case today. And I think we laid them out in three very easy to understand tenets. First tenet is that the defendant, Mr. Samuel L. Smith, has great umbrage and grievance with the plaintiff, Mr. Hood, over said unpaid wages. Now, Mr. Smith would tell you that he was going to get around to bring that horse back, just like Mr. Hood was going to get around to paying him. I think we've also proven today that Mr. Smith was seen in Lott's Tavern drinking a very specific drink with this bottle, which was ironically found where the horse had been. Some might call it the scene of the crime. I think lastly we have ascertained that Mr. Smith, who said he was going to go home and sort things out and take the horse back later, that he thought belonged to Mr. Hood, was in fact not at home. And he was not heading back to Washington when he was apprehended. He was away from his home, heading away from Washington. So I would posit to you this morning, or this afternoon if I might, that the Republic of Texas, I did not fight for the Republic of Texas. You did not fight for the Republic of Texas. I did not lose friends in the fight against Mexico for us to have an independent republic. You did not lose friends in the fight against Mexico for an independent republic to live in a land where one man may feloniously and grievously take another man's property in the middle of the night because he has a grievance with you. There's a process. It's called due justice. If you have grievance and you have been paid, we have a court. We have laws. Contrary to what my colleague might not like the laws of the Republic of Texas, he may return back to Louisiana from whence he came if he doesn't like them. We have ways to regain legally wages we're owed, wages other than taking the property of others. Ladies and gentlemen, if you believe that, I would ask you today that there was only one thing to find, and that is to find the defendant, Samuel L. Smith, guilty of horse stealing. Your Honor, that's all I have.
Mr. McFarland, does the defense wish to make a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor. I'd first like to thank the prosecution for that stirring bit of patriotism. Truly warms the cockles of my heart. Horse thievery. This is a very serious crime in Texas. Just a few years ago, if you were found guilty of horse thievery, you'd be hanged. Today, if found convicted, my client could face lashes out in the public square, being branded for the rest of his life horse thief. We need to be absolutely sure before we convict a man of such a serious charge. Looking over the facts of the case, I'm struck by how little prosecution might have to differ upon. We both readily assert what the state of affairs was between my client and Mr. Joseph Hood was going into the night of the 13th of February. My client, a hard-working man, had put in new windows and doors at Mr. Hood's place of business. I'd have you look around this room. The birthplace of Texas Liberty doesn't even have windows in it. But Mr. Hood has windows. It's real easy to get them when you don't plan on paying for them. We both readily assert that my client was found drinking on the night in question. And we both assert that 2 days later, on the morning of the 15th, my client was found with Mr. Hood's horse. We differ on the manner in which that can be explained. Now, the prosecution would have you believe that there's only one explanation. Out and out, malevolent, premeditated horse thievery. But isn't it just possible that after the horse was spooked by the bottle, that it broke free of its reins, went out into the woods around Washington, where it was found the next morning by my client? They would have you believe that my client is a horse thief, but do the actions of Mr. Smith add up to what a horse thief would do? A horse thief would take that horse and go down to San Felipe or Columbia or Houston. Houston is a paradise for horse thieves. Trade that horse out, get that money, and flee. A horse thief, when presented with the opportunity of his capture, would give chase, would flee. But when the sheriff comes upon him, he does not mention anything about a chase or a pursuit, but a calm conversation. Now, my client admits that what he should have done, the moment that he found that horse, was take it immediately and without hesitation to Washington to find its rightful owner. Mr. Hood, when the work on his building was completed, should have immediately and without hesitation paid my client for the work that he had done. He had cash to post up for a reward to find the horse, but he couldn't find that cash once the work was completed on his building. Instead, Mr. Hood said times are tough. He took his time. He was going to get around to it. Well, when Mr. Smith found that horse out in the woods, he didn't return it right away without hesitation as he should have. Instead, he took his time. He was going to get around to it. Just run a few errands before bringing that horse back. The last thing that I would have you consider is the actual language of the indictment. It says that under the seduction of the devil himself, my client, with force and arms, stole that horse. I put it to you, have you found any evidence here that suggests that with force and arms, my client stole that horse? Thank you.
Gentlemen and gentlewomen of the jury, you were asked to be fair in your decision based on the testimony you have heard here today. You must now determine the guilt or innocence of Mr. Smith, the prisoner at the bar charged with horse stealing on the 15th of March of this year of our Lord, 1837, in the town and county of Washington, the Republic of Texas. If you believe Mr. Smith, the prisoner at the bar, maliciously and with intent stole the horse of Joseph L. Hood, then you must find him guilty. If you believe Samuel L. Smith, the prisoner at the bar, did not steal the horse, but found the animal and therefore had him in his possession, you must then find him not guilty. The court is now in recess for the purpose of jury deliberation.
Give you a few minutes to deliberate. Your decision has to be made. If you not come to a conclusion, say so to the judge when he asks.
Has the jury reached a verdict? I believe he's over here to your right.
This is it right here. Where's the rum?
Have we reached the verdict?
We're unable to reach a verdict. So the jury is hung. The jury cannot come to a verdict. The trial will be continued at the next session of this court, where a new jury will be drawn, and in court, where a new jury will be drawn. Court is adjourned.
All right. Now, before y'all go too far, thank you very much, first of all, for being our jury. I hope you enjoyed that. So that case was a bit confusing, wasn't it? So that case is a case that took place here in 1837 in Washington, would have been tried directly across the street at the county courthouse. That's when Washington was the county seat of this county. Now, we have the record from that case, the final record from that case, but we do not have the case files. And so we had to make some inferences based on, so we know the verdict, which was guilty. The verdict was guilty. So we know the verdict. We also do know that Joseph Hood was the grand jury foreman, which which is a bit of a conflict of interest. But it is correct that he was drawn from a list of freeholders that would not have been challenged like he would have been in court as part of the pedigree.
Oh, so conveniently chosen.
Louisiana is beckoning, sir.
And so what we did was we mixed in, we created a story, but mixed in some historical fact with that story. And so about 40% of this is actual historical record, about 60% of it is our made-up story. Now, most of the statements you were listening to are actually statements from the final record, especially my indictment. If you didn't get the number of aforesaids in that document, it was quite a lot. So anyway, again, thank you very much for participating. Thank you for joining us to watch. We appreciate that as well. Now, if you would like, we do have a replica of the court seal for the 3rd Judicial District of the Republic of Texas. And so if you would like, please bring your summons to me and I will stamp that for you. This was found on a court document in the Star of the Republic Museum and we recreated it as part of this program. If y'all would like, please come forward and I can give you some summons to have on as well. His punishment was 39 lashes on the bare back, branded with the letter T.
And he is still no more horses after that.
And then in 1839, they reinstated horse stealing as a capital offense, so he would have hung.
Oh, wow.
But they had just changed the